I promised my mom and my church family I'd try to be the opposite of that guy that took them away.
Racism, hatred, and discrimination continues to be this country's Achilles heels.
I want to make sure that people remember the families, remember the survivors, and that we never forget.
Good evening, I'm Judy Gatson.
And I'm Billie Jean Shaw. Tonight, we come to you from inside of the sanctuary at Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, a holy space that has stood for more than 2 centuries as a symbol of faith, perseverance, and justice.
Founded in 1816, Mother Emanuel's pulpit served as a call to action in the fight for civil rights, a place where leaders like Denmark Vesey once dreamed of freedom and where generations have gathered to worship.
But 10 years ago, this very same sanctuary becoming the scene of unspeakable tragedy when cowardly racism and hatred desecrated a Wednesday night Bible study, leading to the church's pastor and 8 worshipers being murdered as they bowed their heads in prayer.
As we gather our hearts and our thoughts, we do not mark this day as an anniversary. Instead, it is a commemoration of profound loss.
Incredibly, there are so many people who are unaware of what happened at Mother Emanuel.
Tonight's program is being shared with limited interruptions to remember what was lost, honor those impacted, and to reflect on what still needs to change.
Our Greg Adeline taking a look back now at the tragedy that unfolded here on the night of June 17th, 2015.
June 17th, 2015.
It was right before the newscast that night, a short time before the newscast. We were on deadline for the show.
News from Charleston that on the surface appeared unthinkable.
As the news started coming in about the possibility of a shooting and the possibility of it being at a church, and then hearing that it could be Mother Emanuel, that church, literally in our newsroom, we were just hoping and praying that what we were hearing was not true.
By 11, the unthinkable was confirmed.
Good evening, everyone. We are covering breaking news tonight in the WIS newsroom. A church shooting in Charleston. Someone walked into Emmanuel AME Church at 110 Calhoun Street in Charleston, the historic district there, and started shooting.
That night, it got worse and worse. Every phone call, with every piece of information we got, it was just unbelievable.
We have new information for you now from CNN. A source tells them that they have confirmed there are multiple injuries at the site of the Charleston church shooting tonight.
Billie Jean Shaw was preparing to go to sleep for her sunrise reporter shift when her supervisor called.
And I just happened to be up. And she was like, "Oh, I'm glad you answered." She said, "We want to send you to Charleston, for your shift in the morning because there is reports of a shooting inside of a church." And I remember thinking, this is, okay, let me just grab my bag and go, my work bag. And as I was leaving, my mom said, "You might want to just pack some extra clothes just in case because you don't know how long you're going to be down there."
And once she got down there, a few hours later,
I did not know what I was walking into. I don't think anyone could be prepared for that. I don't care if you were in this business for 50 years. That is a scene that you can never prepare yourself for.
They were having Bible study at the time when police say a man in his early 20s came in and shot those 9 people.
And from there, I was down there from the night that the incident happened, a few hours after it happened, all the way through the last funeral of the victim.
in her search for an interview, Billie Jean found someone with first-hand information.
Her name was Sylvia Johnson, and she happened to be the cousin of Senator Clemente Pinckney, who was the pastor of Mother Emanuel. They grew up like siblings.
Details emerged in that interview that would vault the story to a different level of evil.
The suspect came to the church and he asked for the pastor. He sat next to my cousin, Reverend Clemente Pinckney, throughout the entire Bible study. At the conclusion of the Bible study, from what I understand, they just start hearing loud noises. He just said, "I have to do it." He said, "You rape our women and you taking over our country." and you have to go.
A rampage of hate that shocked the state and the nation.
6 women, 3 men shot inside that church last night when officials say the suspect walked in, sat with parishioners for roughly an hour during prayer service. At the end of prayer service, he stood up and opened fire.
The shooting in Charleston reverberating to the highest office in the land.
To express our deep sorrow over the senseless murders that took place last night. Michelle and I know several members of Emmanuel AME Church. We knew their pastor, Reverend Clementa Pickney, who, along with 8 others, gathered in prayer and fellowship and was murdered last night.
In the days that followed, a horrible picture emerged, a racially motivated massacre in a house of worship. For those covering the story, theirs was a front row seat they never saw it, and still can't fully comprehend.
In this very moment, I still don't know what to do with that. I still don't know what to say, because here these people are in South Carolina, and this is the part that I don't understand. I'm from South Carolina. I'm a proud South Carolina native. Religion and faith and going to church is a part of our DNA, just like these palmetto trees that you see. And I will never, I don't care how many shootings and how many times we cover in the news, I will never understand the amount of evil that it takes to walk inside of a church, pray with people who were nice to you. If you look at the confession tapes of the shooter, he said, I almost didn't do it because they were so nice. And someone is holding your hand, closing their eyes to pray, and you shoot them.
You know, even the whole aspect of covering the story and what it was like for us that night, to be honest with you, I really don't even like talking about it because I know what those families went through. So much worse. So much worse.
And as the memorials unfolded one after the next, these journalists were a witness and a voice for the hurting, keeping those victims and their families front and center.
You know, you want to honor these lives first. And in covering this story, you don't ever want the murderer's name to become more well known than the lives that were taken. So trying to make decisions about our coverage to make sure that it accurately reflected what happened, but that it also honored the lives of the people impacted.
And they talked about forgiveness and their faith and how, yes, this was difficult, but they knew that God had them. So who am I as a reporter to say, I can't do this, I can't talk about this, I can't see this through, when these women witnessed the tragedy and immediately were able to forgive.
That legacy lives on 10 years later at Mother Emanuel, along with a solemn reminder to never forget.
As we commemorate, we should also take a look at the work that still needs to be done.
While also reminded in the lives of the Emmanuel 9 and those who hold them in their hearts, unthinkable hate is no match for enduring love.
I want you to hug 3 persons right next to you. Tell them it's going to be all right.
Rooted in faith and resilience, Mother Emanuel has spent the past 10 years holding space for grief, making room for healing, and finding new strength. Reconciliation, though, is more complicated. A number of families have left the church for various reasons, but the current pastor, Reverend Eric Manning, says he has seen his congregation grow and embrace the mantle of forgiveness. Mother Emanuel, a sanctuary of resistance, a testimony to the civil rights movement, and always a beacon of light. When a hate-filled attack turned this sacred place into a scene of unspeakable pain, it shattered lives, but it did not break the spirit of this church or its people.
Sometimes it's rather challenging. So you do your very best, as I have tried to do for the past almost 9 years now, to just serve, to just be there, to just be present.
Reverend Eric Manning admits he didn't fully understand the breadth of the season he was entering when he moved into the assignment as the new pastor of Mother Emanuel, but he was willing to serve wherever needed.
First sermon here at Mother Emanuel is drawn from Psalm 23, as I confessed to the congregation that I do not know how to lead them, but I believe God knows how to lead them, and I will follow what God has directed me to do.
Since that day, he has helped lead Mother Emanuel through reconciliation and the evolving process of healing.
I love the fact, Judy, that you said evolving, because it is an evolution. Everyone continues to grow. Everyone continues to be better, right? But don't get me wrong, we still have our moments when we weep, when we mourn, when we agonize over what has happened. But those periods are not as long as they used to be, and I'm immensely grateful for that.
Those who have experienced grief have learned it does not abide by any rules, and it weighs differently on each heart. Reverend Manning says some families have left Mother Emanuel, others decided to stay. He says it is a privilege to listen to their stories of sorrow and grace.
The impact of Ethel Lance. I just heard one of the most fascinating stories recently as somebody was reminding me and sharing with others a conversation that he had with her a couple of days before she was murdered. I sit down and talk with Polly from time to time, one of the survivors, and I'm so grateful again to hear her testimony and then to see her quiet strength that she continues to display day after day, year after year. I said to Chris Singleton, we were chatting, and I said, Team Manning's very proud of you, brother, because when we met you 9 years ago at a lunch place, we were sitting around and just talking, and we have seen him grow, and we've seen Cameron, we've seen Caleb. So we've seen God do so many things and so many miraculous things in all their lives.
In a moment that would have consumed many by righteous anger, some family members stunned the world by offering forgiveness. Pastor Manning is hopeful that we all somehow one day can find that place.
Judy, I will always say it's not easy, but it is something that we have to continuously embrace on a sometimes hourly basis or every minute basis, because the world knows already the results of hate, but do they know the results of God's love?
In a historic church where voices like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once rose from the pulpit, and where Reverend Pinckney's presence is still felt, Reverend Manning carries the weight of leadership and legacy. I wondered if there was a question he might ask the former pastor of what is the oldest AME church in the South.
I guess now since you asked the question, and I have time to reflect upon it, I probably would reach out and just say, did I do it right? Did I honor your legacy, your memory? Did I uphold the memory of the 37 pastors who have served Mother Emanuel? And did I uphold it correctly?
As it has always done, Mother Emanuel will continue to welcome all who enter its doors of praise and worship, not just to tell the story of what happened, but also to carry a light that will always conquer darkness.
So I asked them, when you go back to your respective locations, please carry back with you not the church that was known by the tragedy, but the church that is known by the miraculous gifts and graces that God continues to bestow on us each and every day.
As we move into this season of commemoration, it is important to recognize and respect that everyone is at a different place in this process. Some families are participating in the official events, others have chosen not to. There are no wrong or right answers when it comes to grieving. Some families have decided they want to share their stories. They're ready to share their stories of their loved ones. And so tonight, it is our honor to share their testimonies.
In the last decade, the families of the Emmanuel 9 have walked through healing in different ways, some choosing to reflect quietly, others publicly. Each path honored, each story sacred. Take Chris Singleton, for example. Sharing his testimony out loud saved him, he says, after tragedy unfolded. The world watched as a college freshman on his way to becoming a pro athlete refused to let his story end in bitterness. Because for Chris, each chapter is a choice, and the one he keeps choosing is love.
Sharonda Ann Coleman Singleton, faith-filled, strong, well-dressed, my biggest fan, beautiful smile, just a light. That's what she was.
48 hours after losing his mom inside of Mother Emanuel, 18-year-old Chris Singleton chose forgiveness.
Love is always stronger than hate. So if we just love the way my mom would, then the hate won't be anywhere close to what love is.
10 years later, he still feels the same.
I can try to put it into worldly terms, but there's certain things that happen to you in your life and you know that it's a lot bigger than just you. And that was the case when I forgave my mother's killer, because I didn't plan on doing that, didn't know that was going to happen. And since then, I've realized the power in it.
Power that became fuel to push through, as his mother's absence would be his first great loss, but not his last.
I lost my dad a year and a half after my mom, yeah. And so that's why I pretty much raised my little brother and sister, and now they're doing really well and they're thriving. And I feel like right now I've learned that, you know, leading by example is the best thing you can do with anything.
What would you say this decade has taught you the most about yourself?
I think over the last 10 years, I've learned to be resilient. I've learned to push through pain. I could have gone down one road of destruction and using that pain to be an excuse, but I feel like I've gone the other way and used that pain to be, you know, fuel to drive my passions.
But unity for me, it means when I see somebody, and I know we have a different perspective, they've got a different stance than I do, I know that they've got a story behind theirs, just like I have a story behind mine.
His message of unity, forgiveness, and love has taken him across the world, into classrooms, onto corporate stages, and into the hearts that needed a reminder of what's possible.
When I share deep and dark and tough things, it's therapeutic for me. I've realized that, you know, some parents aren't teaching love the way that my mom taught me.
Now a husband and father of 3.
What can we expect from Chris Singleton for the next decade to come?
I know that I want to coach my little boys and maybe my daughter in something one day, but I think the number one thing I hope happens in 10 years is that, you know, my son's graduating from high school and, you know, he says, Dad did a great job, the same way I said my mom did.
That's amazing. I will end with this. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your mom's story, about her living, her legacy, and what you want people watching to remember about this mark of where we are now?
Yeah, I guess one of my biggest fears is that people will forget about my mom and my church family. And that's part of the reason what drives me to do what I do so frequently, because we see stuff happen all over the world, right? In, you know, Buffalo, New York, or in Pittsburgh, or at a school in Tennessee. Like, we see terrible things happen. And I'm always scared that people are gonna forget about my hero, my mom. And so I just encourage people to remember them, to pay your respects if you ever come down to Charleston, and to support people that are doing the opposite of what my mother's killer was doing. And that's spreading the mission of love and trying to bring people together.
Earlier this month, a new documentary premiered honoring the life of Reverend Daniel Simmons. His daughter Rose had the opportunity to be on set during the filming of the movie Emmanuel, which was produced by Steph Curry and Viola Davis. That experience inspired her to share her father's story through a very personal lens.
My father was the second person that was shot that night. Senator Pinckney being the first. And after that, he was shot several times.
Rose Simmons was out of town when she got the phone call that changed her life.
I really wasn't thinking so much about what happened as I was about that I would never see him again.
Now, as she carries her father's legacy, Rose wants people to know his story, not just how he died, but also how he lived.
I remember as a young child, we didn't have a lot of the problems or situations families would have, because he was very devoted to making sure that he was a great provider.
I think he had to become his own hero, and I believe that's how he lived his life. He nicknamed himself Super Simmons, and I think in order to do that, you have to have this presence about who you are.
In a newly released documentary that premiered in South Carolina leading up to the 10-year commemoration of the Mother Emanuel tragedy, Simmons recounts the story of her father's perseverance and determination, not just the night of the shooting, but throughout his life as a Vietnam veteran, teacher, pastor, and a faithful servant leader in the AME Church. The film is entitled One Last Breath.
I got that title because out of the 9, he was actually the last person to pass away and the only person to survive the shooting and make it to the hospital. He wanted to live for his family. He wanted to live for his church. He wanted to live for himself, but he knew that there was a possibility that he wouldn't make it, but it didn't stop him, and I'm not surprised.
Rose says her dad has always been an indomitable force.
He was a strong person, inwardly and outwardly. He had a strong sense about himself, who he was, and what he wanted to achieve in life. And those things he went after, he accomplished all of them. He was a finisher.
She created a sacred space in her home that honors her father's quiet strength. It holds treasured memories from his years in the pulpit, handwritten sermon notes, prayer blankets, even a small altar. Each item a reflection of the unwavering faith that shaped his life and ministry. Now they will serve as a testimony to the world as part of the Daniel Simmons Museum exhibit in his hometown of Mullen, South Carolina. Rose says she will spend the rest of her life wishing she had one more minute with her daddy. But it does give her some peace knowing that his legacy of love and service will inspire generations to come.
I was not challenged in my faith or my belief that he was killed in the service of the Lord. Actually, it did the very opposite that most people would think. It energized me and charged me because I knew that there's nothing like this that can happen and God's not in it. And I felt secure in knowing that if this happened to people serving the Lord and my father was in that number, that gave me a sense of, I don't want to say the word pride, I want to say a sense of gratitude, of knowing that he, although it was a terrible place, but he was in the right place for the Lord.
What happens when faith is tested by tragedy? It's a question that can only be answered through experience. For Cynthia Hurd's family, that experience comes in waves through the loneliness and grief, the sudden reminders to the return of the values of faith Cynthia held to her core.
But through it all, God has sustained us. There's a time and place for everything. And now it's a time for us to focus on the 9 families
Mother Emanuel is where generations of the Graham family's love for Christ grew.
My grandmother went to Emmanuel. My mother went to Emmanuel. They sung in the choir. Obviously, as kids, Cynthia and I and Jackie, we all went to Emmanuel and were engaged in church activities, Sunday school, Easter speeches. We all had strong faith.
And suddenly, their faith tested.
It's been 10 years now since the tragedy. Where are you in your healing or grieving process? Because everyone's different. Where are you at right now?
Yeah, I struggled with my faith after Charleston because Cynthia and my family has such a relationship with God. I asked the question, where were you? How could something like this happen in the church to Cynthia and 8 others and terrorize our community? And so I had to rebuild faith, and I had some doubts, and then I remember the meaning of Emmanuel, which is God is with us.
Charlotte City Council member Malcolm Graham is the younger brother of Cynthia Hurd.
What light was she to you in your life?
Well, Cynthia was amazing. She was personable, she was sharp, she was candid, she enjoyed life. She was quiet at times, but very smart.
For over 30 years, Cynthia was a librarian in Charleston County, a quiet spirit whose legacy now speaks volumes.
The library system named the library after Cynthia, the Cynthia Graham Hurd St. Andrews Regional Library. Cynthia worked that night at the College of Charleston for some 16 years, and one of their highest academic scholarship is named after Cynthia. The University of South Carolina, an anonymous donor, donated money for individuals pursuing a master's degree in information technology and library science after Cynthia. The Congressional Black Caucus gave her the Phoenix Awards, and she didn't achieve these things just because she was killed. She achieved these things because she lived.
I see you're smiling when you're talking about those accolades and achievements. You actually created the Cynthia Graham Hurd Foundation, and with this foundation, the mission is to help people have access to books. Tell us more about the mission.
Yeah, literacy, reading, civic engagement was all things Cynthia really cared about. You go to her home, and there's books everywhere, and so we wanted to recognize that legacy by getting books donated through the foundation, then redistribute them to those communities that need them.
Speaking about books, you have released a book earlier this year called The Way Forward, Keeping the Faith and Doing the Work Amid Hatred and Violence. Where did you get the strength to even put pen to paper and talk about this?
I wanted to put in writing from my perspective, my family perspective, what happened to my sister each and every step of the way, from the Confederate flag coming down to me meeting President Barack Obama after he sung Amazing Grace, going through the trial, right? That this is American history, it's not just Black history, right? And history worth teaching and knowing.
But the wounds aren't just historical. They still resurface, like in 2022, when the Buffalo supermarket shooter carved the name of Cynthia's killer onto his weapon.
How do you deal with that when you see that those kind of things pop up in the news? Because, of course, you don't get a trigger warning.
Keep the faith, do the work, right? That's the model, the foundation. It's something Cynthia would probably say as well. You gotta have strong faith, and sometimes you gotta just dry your eyes and get off your knees and get back to work. And so there's work to be done, right? And so maybe the work is a part of my therapy, I'm not sure.
Today, Malcolm continues that work in public office, in the community, and through a tennis tournament which raises money for the Cynthia Graham Hurd Foundation. A reminder that his sister is still showing up as she rests in the arms of the Lord.
She found God at an early age, and she had a spiritual belief that was strong. Faith that works with, it's not dead. That was one of her favorite, James chapter 2. And so she had a strong faith, and by evidence of her still going to Bible study at Emmanuel, where she would stop by and just be engaged and involved in the activities of the church. And it kind of strengthened her faith by just being in that environment.
Well, now, 10 years later, when we talk about grief and the immeasurable suffering for the families of the victims, it is so important to remember that everyone is really at a different stage in that process. The impact of a senseless crime like this can remain with all of us, and unfortunately, with other victims and communities that have also been targets of hatred and violence. However, it is so important to share the stories of those who continually triumph over the worst of adversity.
Joining us now to help us lead this discussion is licensed therapist Ashley Young from Everyday Wellness, who works with individuals and families to manage anxiety and to build resilience. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to begin with the process of grieving and how important it is to go through that process and understand that, as we mentioned, people are in different stages 10 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. People are familiar, a lot of people are familiar with the stages of grief: bargaining, denial, acceptance, anger, depression, but they don't always happen in a particular order, and sometimes we cycle through all of them more than one time. And I think it's important to recognize that people navigate grief in their own way. There's no exact right way to grief or perfect way to grief. It looks distinctly different for everyone, and so we have to hold space and make room for that.
You know, a part of our goal in doing this special 10 years later was to make sure that we honor the legacies, right? But in doing that, to be mindful that we don't re-traumatize people.
Right.
And a part of that, you say, in terms of how you approach these conversations, how you approach these topics, how you engage with people affected by a tragedy, is that you do have to remember it's not your job to try and fix everyone else's pain.
We shouldn't try to fix someone. It's not our responsibility. And sometimes in an effort to convey empathy and people don't have the exact words to share, they tend to redirect the trauma back to themselves and personal experiences, which is not helpful. And so some helpful things that one could say is that I'm sorry that has happened. I can't imagine how that must feel, but we don't have to share our personal stories, at least not in that moment, if it's not solicited.
Yeah, and so showing empathy without making it about yourself. You also talk about how to talk to different ages about what happened, because you don't want to sugarcoat it as if it didn't happen during this time, but you want to make sure you're having those age-appropriate conversations. How should you approach the children?
You don't have to give all the gory details. Again, you mentioned it, you hit it right on, making sure it's age-appropriate. It's okay to say it's a very bad thing that happened, a very unfair thing that happened to a group of caring people. And you can give as many details as you can according to the age and as they ask, but it's important to let them know that you are able to ask those questions, you're available to ask those questions, and that their feelings matter.
What signs can we look for to see where someone is in that process? And I'll take this, again, this special as an example. Some family members very much wanted to talk about the legacy of their loved ones. Others very much want their privacy, which we respected. But even if you're related to someone who you know was impacted by this, how do you pick up the clues on where they are in that timeline of grief?
It may be a huge responsibility for a person to try to figure out where they are in the timeline, but it's okay to ask. You know, this is what I'm noticing, this is what I'm observing. I want you to know that I'm here for you. I don't know quite how to help, but maybe can you show me or tell me how to help you? And I think that helps us kind of understand where they are in their grief process.
When you talk about the church and Mother Emanuel, I mean, these families are rooted in faith from the stories that we are seeing here this evening. How is it important to make a collaboration between your faith and also seeking professional help when it comes to the healing process and trying to make sure that you're getting over or getting through what happened, rather?
I think it's very important, and I love the intersection between mental health and faith. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, but I think it's important to recognize that you know, even in our church and in our belief, our pastors are kind of there to help us with our Christian foundation and provide emotional support, but then also we have faith-based providers out there, such as counselors, that can help provide that mental health support, that grief support, right? And the two of them can coexist together. It doesn't have to be isolated one or the other, and that you can have, you know, the saying, you can have Jesus and also a therapist also.
As a part of the season of commemoration that's being
held by Mother Emanuel and really the entire Charleston community. They're holding a mental health panel. It is open to the community. Would you speak a little bit about the stigma that still seems to be associated with addressing mental health, getting counseling, even attending a session like that? I mean, they're hopeful that many people from the community will show up, but there is that stigma where sometimes if you show up at an event like that, people are like, oh, well, what's their struggle? What's their, what's their issue that they're dealing with?
Yeah, the goal is to continue to reduce the stigma, and we do that by showing up and trying to make connections. I think it's, it's still unfortunate that sometimes we still have these beliefs, but mental health is health. The connection between the mind and body is right there. What we feel, what we think here, we feel in our bodies, and I think it's important to recognize it as health. And so as we, as people are showing up, it's important to recognize that community is therapeutic, being able to share, and just a reminder that we're not alone. When something happens like that, such a tragic event that the community is able to kind of be exposed to, we experience this collective grief. It's a shared experience. And so it's important that we honor one another by showing up.
And that's something to remember, when different anniversaries come out, throughout the year and you're missing a loved one, or if you've endured some sort of trauma, to just know that those connections and resources are available. Ashley, I want to close with this because in our notes when we were preparing for this interview, you shared the scripture, Isaiah 41:10, to offer encouragement for people of faith. And just for the family members, like I said, everybody's at a different stage in grief, right?
Yeah.
But the common thread that Billy and I have discovered in talking with people who were directly impacted by this tragedy is that they don't want anyone left behind in the healing process.
Yeah, it is important to remember, for loved ones that have experienced loss, they want to know that their loved ones will never be forgotten.
So what has changed? That's the question many are still asking as they remained outraged that South Carolina is only one of 2 states in the nation that has yet to pass a hate crime law.
Pass the law.
Time and time again.
It's time for South Carolina to take these hate crimes seriously.
Calls for a hate crimes law have been raised at the South Carolina State House.
We should never have to go to church and go through what we went through.
With even survivors and loved ones of the victims of the murders at Mother Emanuel testifying before lawmakers, urging them to get it done. And time again,
the Senate stands adjourned pursuant to the sine die resolution.
The General Assembly has failed to get a hate crimes bill to the governor's desk.
We lost a colleague, and we have not done anything to talk about hate.
A bill named in honor of late State Senator Clementa Pinckney has passed in the House of Representatives with bipartisan support multiple times. It would allow a hate crimes charge and additional penalties like extra time in prison to be added on to charges for violent crimes such as murder or assault. Prosecutors could seek these additional penalties if the perpetrators of those crimes targeted victims based on factors like race, religion, or gender. But every time the bill has stalled out on the Senate floor, dying at the end of the legislative session before getting a debate.
If it came to a vote in the South Carolina Senate, it would pass, okay? And it would pass with bipartisan support. And there may be more Republicans that would vote for it than Democrats. But we just cannot get it to a vote.
Supporters of the hate crimes bill put that failure squarely on the shoulders of one lawmaker, Senate Republican leader Shane Massey, who personally opposes the legislation.
I'm not a fan of enhancements. I think we ought to treat everybody the same. And I mean, if somebody assaults you, it ought to be the same as a penalty for assaulting me.
But Massey has remained adamant. He alone is not the reason the bill has fallen short in the GOP-dominated Senate, claiming more Republicans oppose it than Democrats will admit.
I understand they want to put everything on me, and that's fine. I'm happy to be the bad guy. But the reality is that bill does not have sufficient support within our caucus to bring it up. If it did, it would have already come up. If I were the only one objecting to it, it would have come up.
Some opposed to the bill have said it's unnecessary because there are federal hate crime laws being enforced. Under those, the white supremacist shooter at Mother Emanuel was convicted and sentenced to die. But many others say hate crimes victimize more than individuals. terrorizing and isolating entire communities. And they vow to not stop their fight until this legislation becomes a permanent part of state law.
We will continue to push for a hate crimes law again next year.
The fight to pass a hate crimes bill isn't just happening inside the State House.
What do we need? Hate crime bill. When do we need it? Now.
It's also being led by everyday citizens like Tyler Gatson.
I'm outraged that there's no hate crime bill right now or law in South Carolina because I'm a black man. I feel like my personal safety, that people who do not agree with the way that I may look or want me in whatever place that I'm in would hurt me, and South Carolina would not step in.
Tyler began advocating for a state law against hate crimes 5 years ago after a class assignment his senior year at Ridgeview High's Scholar Academy. His research included the tragedy at Mother Emanuel.
It doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter who you may like, how much money you have, it affects everybody.
And this 2019 video of a Midlands teen shooting bullets at boxes while using racial slurs. The teen was arrested for making threats, but not charged with a hate crime. There was no state law to support it.
We saw in the video while he shot at shoe boxes and said that he hates black people. There's actual people out here who are shooting black people because they do not like us. And that was something that outraged me a whole lot more.
The more Tyler learned, the more personal the fight became. In 2020, he joined a caravan of love that started at Mother Emanuel and ended at the State House, pushing for change. He's worked with local representatives and even testified before lawmakers.
It was something that I was a little bit nervous about, especially going towards elected officials. But as we got there, everyone was they embraced us. There were a few other of my peers as well there. They embraced us, they listened to us, and that was something that at that point in time, without the Scholars Academy, I don't think that I would have been able to experience that, because most people my age don't think that they can, in fact, reach out to their representatives or talk to them.
Nicole Walker, Tyler's former teacher and the director of Ridgeview's Scholar Academy, is proud of the work started in her classroom.
I feel like my job is to teach them critical thinking and communication skills. I always say my job is not to teach you what to think, but how to think, and then how to express that thinking publicly. It's great to write a paper in a classroom, but that doesn't affect any change that kids might want to see happen.
She believes students are often left out of important conversations despite being deeply aware of the world around them.
I think that we often underestimate students and think that they're too young to understand things when they understand things very often much more clearly than adults do.
While she acknowledges some people believe hate crime laws aren't necessary and others don't think these conversations belong in schools, she believes the lack of protection speaks volumes.
I'm absolutely shocked. I think that we owe it to our minority communities and our vulnerable communities to say to them, we see you, we believe you deserve protection, we believe you deserve justice, and not saying those things, I feel like is very damaging to those communities, and it's time for that to stop.
Tyler agrees and is following through. In May, he graduated from the College of Charleston with a degree in political science.
I have an end goal of becoming a politician, maybe working at the State House, maybe at the Capitol, but I would continue to not only fight for a hate crime law in the state of South Carolina, which hopefully I won't have to do too much, because hopefully we get it during the next session, but also just being there for people on a daily basis, educating my peers, educating other people who may not know things, and just being there for others as a citizen and being active in my community is very important to me.
The wife of Reverend and Senator Clemente Pinckney, Mrs. Jennifer Pinckney, has made it a priority to protect her girls' privacy and to make sure that they have the space to grieve on their own terms. However, the girls have taken the opportunity to speak out and uplift their father's legacy.
In 2021, the Justice Department announced an $88 million settlement for family members of those killed and the survivors. The case called for accountability for a faulty background check that allowed the gun used in the massacre to be purchased. The daughters of Reverend Clemente Pinckney, Eliana and Milana, spoke out that day, making it clear no amount of money would ever bring their dad back. They also made a promise to follow in his footsteps, making an impact.
When I was 6 years old when this terrible massacre happened, I didn't know that my father was such a big inspiration to people all over the world.
For the first time, I think in so long, as a young African American woman, to see a government acknowledge the fact that racism still exists and how prevalent it is in our country, and for them to actively try to combat it in every way they can, and to acknowledge the fact that gun violence is an issue, and to do everything they can to correct a mistake that happened, is so important to me. It allows me and my sister to have the opportunity to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that my father's legacy doesn't go away.
The girls, along with their mother, are also continuing Reverend Pinckney's work through his foundation, which supports religious, educational, and charitable causes that the late senator supported while serving as a leader in his church, his community, and the South Carolina Senate. The foundation's website has a powerful video featuring Eliana in her own words.
Nothing has changed. Fathers and brothers and cousins and family members and friends are still being killed by people who don't care about what is in our hearts or on our minds, but based off of factors that are out of our control. We as African Americans are born with a target on our backs, which in the eyes of some people should be a death sentence. Our family has never believed in fighting violence with violence, but then we often ask ourselves, what are we to do?
One of the foundation's signature efforts is the 4-H Pinckney Leadership Program, designed for middle and high school students who are interested in developing their leadership abilities and awareness through civic engagement. The goal is to empower students to lead with humility, serve with compassion, and inspire others through integrity. You can support the foundation and the meaningful work it's doing in our state by going to the Pinckney Foundation website, keeping alive a legacy of leadership and love.
There are a number of memorials being planned in honor of the Emmanuel 9. One of the most powerful, recently unveiled here at the Allen University Boeing Institute for Civility. In the stillness of this space, where reverence now meets remembrance, 9 bronze busts now stand as eternal witnesses to faith, courage, and sacrifice. From the thoughtful expressions in their eyes to the quiet dignity in their features, they are not simply sculptures. Each one captures the essence of a life lived with purpose. And on each piece, a plaque reminds us they were not just victims. They were beloved souls, servant leaders, and faithful believers. The memorial was placed right in the heart of Allen University's Boeing Institute of Civility because its sole mission is to advance civil discourse in America and across the globe. It was also built in honor of the late State Senator Clemente Pinckney, a proud 1995 graduate of Allen University, as well as former pastor of Mother Emanuel AME Church. While at Allen, Pinckney graduated magna cum laude, was elected president of the freshman class, senior class, and student body. Reverend Daniel Simmons also graduated from Allen, earning a BA in Education Administration and going on to serve in the Army as a teacher and pastor. Tywanza Sanders was also a proud alum of Allen University, who is remembered as a poet, barber, musician, and businessman. While the 6 other worshipers did not attend Allen University, they were all deeply rooted in the same faith and devoted members of the AME Church. each one of them reflecting its values: faith in action, service with love, and strength in the face of injustice. And so through this memorial, Allen University is bearing witness to what the AME Church has always known, that even in the face of hatred, love endures, and even in death, faith speaks. After such unspeakable violence in a sanctuary where everyone should be able to fully embrace worship without fear or reservation, security measures have been strengthened significantly.
But one thing has not changed. That's Mother Emanuel's mission, a light in the pathway of darkness. The heart of that mission is found in Matthew 5:14 through 16.
You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house.
In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven.
And so every time Mother Emanuel welcomes a visitor to Sunday service or Bible study, Reverend Manning says that he prays that something happens in that worship service that inspires them to remember that this is not just a place that lived through a tragedy,
but it's a place where God is doing miraculous work.
And then at the tail end of worship, we've recently embraced a song, I Pray For You, You Pray For Me.
I know it well.
And I ask, people to just embrace the person and then grab them by the hand, rock them and shake them and say that we will watch God change things.
Be blessed wherever this life leads you. Let me encourage you. Let me speak life to you. You can depend on God. Always can depend on God, but still, you can depend on me to pray for you. And so, we're going to say it together. Oh, pray. I'm going to keep on praying. No matter what's going on in your life. Remember that God is always on your side. Won't you come and pray? But here's the declaration that I want to make to everyone out there.